Welcome to another how-to guide. I hope you enjoy this one. This is my first ever attempt at doing this. This is kind of a how-to and a maybe how to not mess it up. Bits you're going to need, this may change as I go throughout making this video, but as a good heads up, always start with some plastic tweezers. This little pin is for removing the crown and the stem out of the watch. A little screwdriver for leverage and prying things out of the way, maybe the movement hold and things like that. This is a syringe I got off Amazon. This is a blunt, that's what it's called, and it's a tiny little tip for squirting the oil. Rubber gloves, because this is going to be very messy. Just out of screenshot is some paper towel. Use plenty of that. Case back removal on this watch's case is going to be, because it's got this design, it's a gripper ball. So change that according to what watch you've got. Only going to work on a quartz watch, this mod, and this is a quartz Addies dive. I've done a few mods to it already, but sapphire crystalline. And obviously a different strap, FKM rubber, so that will come off to make life easier whilst doing this. And a little pot which is big enough to not have too much wastage of oil, deep enough to put the watch in, hopefully submerge everything. And this is oil. I've done a lot of research here. This is the best oil for sort of cost effectiveness. I bought this from this company, Texil, and again it was about £14. This is a very thin grade of silicone oil. 50 CS is sort of the way you measure the grade. Guys, you're going to watch this and possibly know more than me, possibly going to correct me. Do chip in. The comment section is going to be really helpful for other people to learn. You're going to have to bear in mind that these kind of oils, very minimal amount of expansion under heat and things like that. So I've not heard many horror stories from what I've read in forums and guides to when you fill these with oil, which again, this is a cheap watch. This is just a bit of fun and just to show you the kind of effect filling a quartz watch with oil, what it's going to have. And I'm going to keep you updated with, does it affect the movement's reliability? Does it affect long-term the battery life? That is something you can know in the long term. Will it affect the timekeeping? All that stuff. These are questions that will be answered a bit more over time. From what I've read, it doesn't dramatically affect it, and quartz movements are totally fine to be immersed in this kind of oil. So that's why I'm doing it. It's just a laugh. It doesn't cost too much money, and it's entertaining, hopefully, for you guys to watch. So without further ado, let's get cracking. First thing I'm going to do is get me gloves on. I'm going to take the strap off. This is quick release, so that part is easy. And before I put this in any oil or anything, while it's dry, if you know what I mean, and clean, I'm going to clear the way a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Take this case back off. I've done this before, so this is just a grip and twist. Another good thing to do before is to give the watch a bit of a clean before you start immersing it in oil and things, because that might, when it's submerged, loosen things and have things floating about, and we don't want that. So a good way of cleaning it is to use the following. A puffer or blower with different size nozzle heads. This is just to help move things out of the way effectively. You don't want to blow with your mouth because you can spray spit and things like that over it. And this Rodico from Bergeon, which is a Swiss maker of many tools and watchmakers items, and this stuff is great for, as you can see here, it's just a dab and clean. So now I can take the back off, put that aside, maybe take this gasket out, put it aside. It's in the way of me just squishing this in here and picking up any debris. You can't quite see it. This is little bits of dirt. There you go, you can see. Use that to clean all the residue away. And now it's time to just remove the movement holder here, which is the plastic ring in this case. So you just gently do a bit of leverage. And what I recommend as well, to stop the whole thing popping out, is just with your plastic tweezers, place it gently on the watch, but nowhere near that copper coil part there. That's very delicate. So just going to gently place it there. So when I do some leverage to pop this movement holder out, it's not forcing the watch movement out, which we don't want to do because that can cause some damage. As you see, now we can just pick that up with these tweezers. Now I need to take this crown out, and the way we do that is we're using this little pin and placing it on where I'll show you to remove the crown and the stem out. The place that you put the pin, just there. Very carefully place it, push gently with my thumb. I've already unscrewed the crown ready, so give it a very little bit of pressure with one hand and then pull with the other, and it should pop out. There we are. Now we're in a position that we can start filling this with oil. I actually found a bigger container because it needs to be deep enough so that the oil totally submerges the watch. So before I start pouring any oil or anything like that, I need to prepare the area with some towel because I know I'm probably going to make a mess. So paper towel down just in case of excess spillage, and when I've with my hands in and out, I'll be droplets and stuff going everywhere. So this is a little bit of a messy job. Bit of preparation makes life easier. Now it's time to get these gloves on. A little bit like a serial killer going to do a job, but anyway, this oil can be poured in now. I'll gently pour this in. I know it seems wasteful, but this is one of those jobs where you're not going to do it too much. There's enough in here. You could probably recycle the rest of that, put it back in here, but I've got enough in there. It's fully submerging the watch, and this is where we're going to use the syringe. What I need to do is I'm going to be gently levering this up so I can get underneath the dial. So I can also preload this syringe with the oil, so I can get rid of the excess air. So now this is loaded to me to now pump this from where any nooks and crannies the oil wouldn't go. So I'm just going to gently put my screwdriver in here just to lever at a point which is going to be safe to lift this dial up. This is fiddly, so I'm going to hold the watch, just get a bit of leverage here. So there's a few air bubbles come out, you see that? So I can tuck this in the corner so it doesn't move around. So once we've got this up a little bit, it's slippery, this is the trouble. I can just put this syringe in and gently inject it, the oil underneath the dial. Just let it settle, give it a few taps, again never touching anywhere that looks delicate or expensive. And then I'm going to preload this again gently with some more oil. Again, it's the fiddly act of picking up something which is now oily and slippery and trying to lift it up enough to get a little bit of a gap under here to just squirt some more oil in there, and this just helps force any bubbles and things like that out. And as I do it, sort of gently tapping and jiggling around here just to help move any bubbles around. Trouble is I haven't got a clear container to see very well if I lifted this up and looked underneath if there's any bubbles in there. Technically you do want one bubble in the watch. I know it's nice to have a bubble free finish, but if you want to alleviate any risk of the oil expanding and then it popping the crystal or popping anything, if you have an air bubble in there, it helps allow for expansion. But I don't know how big the bubble should be and all that stuff. There's not really this is just a cheap silly mod just for a bit of a laugh. For this kind of application, there's no science behind it. And so there's still air bubbles coming out. Get the screwdriver in here just underneath and just keep lifting it and jiggling it a bit. So I'm noticing the more I jiggle it, there's less little tiny bubbles popping out. I think I'm just going to put a little bit more oil in here so I can, when I lift it up a bit, it's still submerged. I don't want to gulp any air in there. I think I'm not getting any more bubbles, so this is going to be a bit of a test now to see if what I've done actually has worked or not. So now, whilst it's submerged, everything from now on is whilst it's submerged. I'm going to put the crown back in and the stem. So that's popped in. Now I'll put the movement holder in, push that in. Now I'll put this gasket back in, float that back in place. Now it's time to put the case back on. Again, this, you need to make sure, you're going to have to fill this with oil again because it's got a domed effect. Now you can use smaller containers, but I've used this just because this is what I've got, and it's easier to put the crown back in and maneuver the thing around and just sort of get to the thing rather than manhandling it in a tiny container. So I'm going to get some more oil back in the syringe and again gently lift this up, insert and inject some more oil. Before I attempt to screw this back down, I'm just going to double check this just screws in neatly and it's not got any obstruction because of the gasket or anything. So that screws in really easily. I'm going to get it as tight as I can by hand. It screws in really nicely. I think it's helped because it's being lubricated. So that's fairly tight by hand, but then I've got to finish that with the case back tool. So that is now okay. Now I'm going to screw this back in. Again, under the oil. So it should technically be fairly leak proof. Now we've got the messy task of I'm going to dry the back off gently with some paper towel and then tighten it off some more with the case back tool. Give this a proper rinse and then we're going to actually do the first reveal. And hey presto, we have an oil filled watch. This is what you get. This is the effect. At any angle you can still see the time. And effectively, I've seen on another channel when they did an oil filled watch and it had a water resistance rating which was almost infinite. No, I know it's not, but they maxed out the pressure test on it and it was a pulsar. I think it had a 50 meter or 100 meter water resist. It was an oil filled quartz watch, just like we did on this one, and that could take anything. It's amazing. But for a cheap watch, this is a novelty and it's very controversial. Some people say I've ruined my watch and it's a joke, it's silly. But I've really found this a lot of fun and I think the effect is fantastic. Look at that. Here we are out in some beautiful natural light. Just check that out. So has it affected the loom? Look, it's projecting the loom, so it looks like it's just printed on the surface of the glass. Look at that. So clever. The way this oil just changes how it looks. So it's almost flat on and you can just see it all still. So cool. Now let's see what this is like submerged underwater. So I'm just going to put this in here. And as you see, when you change the angle, it's totally legible still, whatever angle you put it at. So I want to show you what the difference if you have a watch underwater that doesn't have obviously oil in it, how it looks. As you can see, as soon as there's a slight angle of the watch underwater, you just can't see it. So as a first ever attempt, we're going to see in time, are there any leaks? Is this just going to, on a hot day, explode on me and piss oil everywhere? You will find out. But as actually first attempts go of getting this to actually have no bubbles and be filled with oil and get this kind of cool effect on a really cheap watch, it's been a roaring success, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And you've seen that even someone like me who just wants to give it a go for the first time and share that with you and call it a how-to guide, even though it's kind of a first attempt, we'll soon tell. I'll keep you updated if there's any actual problems with it, and then I'll warn you to not actually do it in the end. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye for now.